Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week on MMA Junkie, we take you on a quick spin through the week's news. I'm Simon Head, and on this week's show, I'm joined by Mr. John Morgan, Mr. Mike Bohn, and gorgeous George Garcia. Lots to talk about this week. Let's kick things right off with UFC Fighting Out 183 this weekend, guys. Turned out to be a big night for former UFC lightweight champion Anthony Showtime Pettis. Defeated Alex Morono to finish his year with back-to-back wins after previously being on a 2-fight skid. But that was the final fight of his contract, guys. And with the former champion now well in form again, it looks like Showtime might have some options on the table as he plots his move for 2021. So to kick things off this week, it's a simple question. What should he do next? We'll put 3 minutes on the clock for you to break it down. And John, you can lead us off.
Yeah, man, for me, this one's pretty easy. I think what he should do next is be patient, sit back, take every single offer you can from every single organization that's out there, and take the one that pays you the most. I mean, Anthony Pettis, former UFC champ, former WEC champ, gave us the Showtime kick, right? One of the greatest highlights in all of mixed martial arts history. The man has absolutely nothing to prove at this point in his career. I mean, he has established himself as to who he is as a mixed martial artist and his greatness. So he has nothing to prove. And he's just 33 years old, but 34 fights, I think, under his belt at this point. So he's probably only got 1 or 2 contracts left. So at this point, cash in, man. Get that money. Stack that paper for the rest of your career. Get yourself set up. If that means you're doing it in a smaller organization against potentially lesser competition, that's fine. So I think, honestly, every single option is on the table. You know, he has nothing left to prove. We know who Anthony Pettis is. Just go make the most money possible in the last stages of your career.
What do you reckon, Mike? Where do you think you can have the most success or make the biggest impact in the next chapter of his career?
Ooh, that's a little bit trickier of a question. I mean, he's got the momentum on his side now, at least. He did bet on himself a little bit here. This is the first time Anthony Pettis is on a winning streak since he went into winning the UFC title like 6 years ago. It's been a few losses here, 1 win there. He's never had this type of momentum. So in that sense, his value, I guess, is the highest it's been in a few years. So I agree with John. He should definitely be going out there and fielding every possible offer. I think that was part of the plan. I do think at the end of the day, he's going to stay with the UFC. That was my prediction. They came to him with a contract offer prior. He said 1 fight ago before, I think, the Cowboy Cerrone fight, and they ended up not reaching a resolution, decided to move forward into free agency. Now I think they might come back around. I don't know if he's going to get a significant raise. I think as a former champion, he's already on a pretty good contract. I don't know what the PFLs, the One Championships, the Bellators are really, if they're going to want to match that at this point in his career. It depends what they think his upside is. So I think at the end of the day, we're likely to see Anthony Pettis stick in the UFC.
He's certainly got options, George. If you were advising him, where would you steer him?
The guys have done a perfect job of summing it up. You know, he's a free agent, and take your time, see where the best dollar is. Now he's had a little bit of time with his younger brother being part of Bellator to see how that ship is run. And I'm sure they'll discuss that. You know, how happy are you with the organization? I mean, Pettis, the younger Pettis seemed to be pretty happy, Sergio. But I just think this guy's a Zuffa guy, carrying over from the WEC to the UFC. You know, I know it's no longer Zuffa, but you guys know what I mean. He just kind of came over part of that era. And much like how Diego wanted to do his own thing and stay with the UFC, I think Pettis should be a part of these negotiations. Sit Dana White down and tell him, hey, look, I've enjoyed working for you through the WEC era, the UFC era. Heck, you put me and Cowboy on a card, UFC 249, where you didn't even need us. Why? Because we're star power. You need us. We need you. Come on, let's do it. Stick your hand out. I bet you Dana shakes it.
Be interesting to see what his next move is. It should be a decent contract for him wherever he goes. Speaking of former champions, guys, Saturday's event at the Apex would have certainly grabbed the attention of another former UFC champion who plans to get his belt back in 2021. TJ Dillashaw's USADA suspension finishes on January 19, and he's keen to get right back in the mix at bantamweight. He was called out by both Jose Aldo and Rob Font after their respective victories this weekend. But which fighter do you think will win the TJ Dillashaw sweepstakes, whether it's those two or whether it's a wild card from outside of them, and end up welcoming the bantamweight champion back to the cage next year? A lot of people want to fight TJ, but who do you think will get that job? 3 minutes on the clock. Mike, you can go first.
Well, I know, first of all, that TJ Dillashaw, his desire and his hope and his team's hope is to get a title shot upon his return. I don't think that's going to happen. Obviously, we're looking at Peter Yan versus Aljamain Sterling. I definitely think, suspension considered, yes, he never lost that bantamweight title in the cage, but he lost it for a very good reason, and that was because he failed the drug test. So I think for him, definitely needs a win, and I think who's going to win those sweepstakes, it's going to be Jose Aldo. For me, the fight I really liked for Dillashaw coming back was Frankie Edgar, but that's now off the table with Edgar fighting Corey Sandhagen. So I think Aldo hit the mark perfectly with this call out here. Two former champions from two former divisions. This is the fight where maybe, you know, if they were on top of their weight class at different times, we never thought this fight would come together, but it was in the back of your mind. Oh, how cool would it be if TJ moves up to 145, Aldo goes down, but it just wasn't realistic. Now we're here. The timing makes sense. It's a fight for both guys who are looking to get themselves in title contention. Book it. It's the fight to make.
George, do you agree with that? Or is there someone else you'd rather see in there with Dillashaw next time out?
Well, that's the one. I think that's the one that's going to happen, because no disrespect to Font, but, you know, you got to look at it from both guys' viewpoints. Font really wants Dillashaw. Aldo really wants Dillashaw. Dillashaw is looking back and knowing, like Mike said, he's probably not going to get that title shot. He wants the title shot, but he's probably not going to get it because it's got to be Jan and Sterling at this point. Otherwise, why are we even doing this? But, I think it's going to be Aldo. But Dillashaw is just in this unique situation. I know he wants Cruz because he wants that one back. Garbrandt for sure wants to knock out Dillashaw. And then, guys, let's not forget about Faber. If he's still in the game and everything else is booked and something comes together last minute, I'd love to see those two square off. So he's going to have options. But, yeah, he should probably forget about the immediate shot. And it does look like to me that Aldo would probably make the most sense.
John, what do you reckon? I mean, how much leverage, if any, has TJ got, given the reason why he lost that title and why he's been away for so long?
Well, that's a great point as well, right? You don't exactly get to call the shots after what happened to him. So I don't think he has a ton of leverage, but he still has marketability, and he is still a former champion. But, you know, in talking about who needs to be considered here, the UFC needs to be considered as well, right? They want to make the most marketable matchup possible, get the most interest possible. And I don't want to disrespect Rob Font at all, because that dude looked amazing. And, man, what a great comeback for him after that time away. He is going to be a future contender in that division. He's going to be a problem for a while. But if you're talking about attention, you're talking about marketability, you're talking about the Dillashaw-Aldo fight. I thought Jose Aldo nailed it with that one. It wasn't a matchup that I was necessarily considering as the fight that I had to see, but now it makes all the sense in the world. Because, listen, Jose Aldo wants a title shot as well, and he's not necessarily lined up for it either. So, to me, the timing for both these guys makes sense. It doesn't potentially ruin any type of young contender in the process, and it's an incredibly marketable fight with two big names, two former champions. The only way I don't want to see that fight, and George said it, if Uriah Faber gets in there as well. I'll take that. If I can't get the two former champs against each other, let me get the two former teammates in the grudge match for a headline.
That would be fantastic. Either of those works for me, that's for sure. The final UFC event of 2020 is in the books, guys. And one interesting stat, courtesy of Mr. Mike Bohn, is the fact that no defending UFC champion was actually unseated during the course of the last 12 months. We've seen vacant titles contested and claimed, but every champ that started the year with the belt has finished the year with that title reign intact. So let's spin things forward 12 months to this time next year, gents. Which of the UFC's current champions is most likely to lose their belt in the next 12 months? And while you're at it, give me one champion that absolutely, definitely will not lose theirs. We'll do 2 minutes for this one. And George, you can lead us off.
I would say that to lose, it's probably going to be Peter Yan. Now, he's been proving me wrong a lot, but still, I just think that division is stacked, and I think Aljamain Sterling is, you know, a legitimate number one. So, you know, like I say, if he gets past Sterling, is he going to get past the others? Jan fights pretty frequently, so he's going to, you know, put himself in that position. But, man, if he can pull it off, all due respect. As far as who's going to be the toughest to lose, I mean, it's easy to just pick off the undefeated ones, right? So I'll just pick one off, and I'll say Khabib, if he's still in the game, as of right now, he's still regarded as the undisputed champ. So I would say it's him. Khabib doesn't lose fights. He barely loses rounds. And then he doesn't really fight more than twice a year. So I'm just playing the math game here. I'm outstatting the stat guy, Mike Bohn. So, yeah, those are my two choices.
What do you reckon, John? Who's you most likely to lose it and definitely won't lose theirs?
I reckon George needs to start playing the math game with the clock. I got no time left to speak, and he messed up. Khabib is going to lose his belt this year. He's either going to give it up in January and say he's retired, or he's going to fight one more time and give it up after that. So Khabib will lose his belt this year. Otherwise, I'd say Jan Blachowicz, only because, man, if you got to face Adesanya and John Jones, that's a tall task. Won't lose? Amanda Nunes. Come on, she's a cut above right now.
Yeah, easy pick, Amanda Nunes. Mike, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I thought we were going to go into this with no champions booked so far this year, but we got an announcement of Amanda Nunes versus Megan Anderson today. So I think she's the only champion on the books right now. I think she's most likely to keep that belt. Her and Valentina Shevchenko, I think, are locks in my opinion. And to lose the belt, I think John made a pretty good call with Jan Blachowicz there, saying that, it could be Izzy and John Jones. Well, I think John Jones is in the running for another heavyweight title, and a man who has a very tall order in front of him is Stipe Miocic. I think getting through Francis Ngannou and John Jones potentially this year will be a little too much, especially because I think they're going to try to turn him around pretty quickly if he does beat Ngannou again. I think it's a very tough order for Stipe Miocic, who is approaching 40 years old.
It's going to be a big year in the UFC in 2021, and interesting stuff before we actually hit record on this week's show, guys. Earlier today, UFC President Dana White published a video on social media hailing the UFC's success in operating during the pandemic. But while he did it, took aim at some specific members of the media for their reporting of certain aspects of the UFC's early attempts to run shows during lockdown conditions. Now, lots to unpack from that video. It's only been out probably about an hour or so. Give us your initial reaction to what you saw, and also give us your assessment of how you think the UFC has actually dealt with the pandemic over the course of 2020. It's been an unprecedented year, so there's a lot to discuss. We'll do 3 minutes on the clock for this one, guys. And John, you've been on the ground on Fight Island. You've been on the ground at the UFC Apex. Who better placed to lead us off?
Yeah, listen, I mean, the video was interesting, right? I mean, Dana definitely stepped back and took a little shots at the media, right? So, you just can't take that stuff personal. I mean, he's a promoter doing what promoters do, right? And I've said it all along. The UFC has honestly earned their right to take a victory lap, man. They have been the ones, putting in the effort and getting this thing done and putting their reputation on the line. And listen, I was one of the few people that was supportive of them doing the shows even back at Tachi Palace. But there were a lot of questions at the time. And I think that's what really got to a lot of people was, Dana at the time and the UFC was just saying, trust me, I got this. And a lot of us were saying, well, how? I mean, explain to us why you got this. And I think that was kind of where the grudge was building between everybody. Now, does that video represent the way the media feels now? I don't think so. I mean, as you said, I've seen it from start to finish throughout the year. They are taking the right steps, and they're definitely doing the right things. They've committed the financial resources and the effort. So I think you're really going back a little ways. But, hey, listen, he says it's all about views. Talking about the good things doesn't get as many as dunking on the media. So well done video, even if it's not entirely accurate anymore.
Mike, what was your take on it? Like me, we've had to sort of cover this sport remotely pretty much since the pandemic started. So what's been your take on it all?
Well, no one should be surprised that Dana White posted this video. This is a guy who once posted an image of himself holding a tombstone with all the other organizations that he wiped out, through his come up and making the UFC come to prominence. So he's not shy to, claiming a victory or anything like that. In a lot of ways, this was a victory for the UFC. All those numbers they posted were accurate. They were through the roof. The popularity grew. People who weren't following UFC at the beginning of the year, I know are following it now. So in a lot of ways, a lot of good stuff came out of this, but you're also ignoring all the people who did get sick. Yes, is the UFC directly responsible for someone dying because of the coronavirus that stemmed from their event? There's no evidence of that at the moment, but people did fail tests. People did get this virus. Are they directly responsible for that? Or is it just the sport in general? There's a lot of, things to go in there, but a lot of these quotes and the stuff in the video were from the people who had genuine concerns at the beginning when Dana White was saying, I'm not sharing anything with you. It's none of your business what our protocols are going to be, et cetera, et cetera. And we just wanted to know answers with that. He wouldn't give it to us. So we asked them louder and more widespread, and that seemed to really upset him. He took it personally. But at the end, yes, the UFC had an extraordinary year. I think the video is a little bit of an unfair depiction, but that's, as I said off the top, a little bit of Dana White's style.
What do you reckon, George? It's been a crazy year. What was your take on that recap?
Y'all don't kill me if I go over here, but let me tell you something. He was also privy to that presidential task force that he was in, so he had a lot of information that he wasn't revealing. And guess what? It was ESPN. Their president told him to stand down. So does he not know what he's talking about? He got that because of pressure from Feinstein and Newsom and things that were happening. Will there be enough hospitals around? These were all legitimate questions. This is a novel virus. We were all figuring it out as we went along. Looking back, once he created that bubble in Fight Island, which was very brilliant, by the way. Yeah, just like the NBA and others, they pulled it off, and that was great. I tip my hat. No employees were released. That no infections came out of this directly. But let's not forget, Conor McGregor early on, he lost an aunt. Khabib Nurmagomedov, his whole village was hammered, and then he lost his father. me and Goes personally, we lost an uncle. So yeah, it affected a lot of us. And I think a lot of us had every right to have these types of questions. That video, take a bow, UFC. The numbers are legit, all that good stuff. But at the same time, I mean, attacking the media, that's just, I don't know, that's pretty lame, I think, in my opinion, because I think the media was just doing their job, reporting every possible info that we had at our disposal at that moment.
Yeah, if you're the media and you don't have all the information, what do? You ask the questions, right? And I think that's all you can do. But no doubting it was a huge year for the UFC. And after their hiatus during the course of 2020, Bellator bounced back pretty well themselves. Made some big name signings towards the back end of 2020. The likes of Corey Anderson, Anthony Rumble Johnson, and Yoel Romero all arriving to bolster the promotion's already pretty deep 205-pound division. I don't know about you guys. I can't think of anything better than for Bellator to run a light heavyweight Grand Prix tournament in 2021. Now, I've had a few crackpot ideas over the years. So are you buying or selling that idea, guys? Is there another division that you'd rather see get the Grand Prix treatment? Or is the light heavyweight one the one to do? And while we're at it, give us your way too early prediction if they did hold a 205-pound Grand Prix. We'll do 2 minutes on the clock to finish off. And Mike, you can lead off.
I do love that idea. I think, with the roster that they're assembling right now, it's perfect. I know there was a lot of talk about them doing women's flyweight. I think there is still some intrigue there, but I think the names that you have, the way to maximize your money is probably to do a light heavyweight Grand Prix. There's some fascinating matchups you could do in there, but I think I would put my money on the champ. I mean, Vadim Nemkov has looked very, very good. I think the way he matches up stylistically with some of these new guys coming in, Rumble Johnson, Corey Anderson, et cetera, I think it's a good tournament for him to really shine in. So I think if we do get that, I would put my money on the champ to go through and retain his belt.
It's a great mix at 205 in Bellator. You've got the new signings, you've got some old established guys in the division, and you've got a newly earned championship at the top of it, Vadim Nemkov, who hasn't actually defended his belt yet. George, what do you reckon?
Man, that's the division to do it in. And guess what? I'm pulling Mousasi from the middleweight and Bader from heavyweight and saying, you two join these signings of Romero, Rumble, Corey Anderson, and, the guys that we've had all along, or at least had for a while now, like Davis and Nemkov. You get your A guys. I think you have to throw in McGeary in there as well. Have at it, man. $1 million. Step up 50 cents, excuse me. And let's do it, because I think you got the names. And as far as who I think wins it, man, I think Bader learned from the lesson, and the fact that he pulled it off at heavyweight, I think that's my guy.
What do you reckon, John?
I say no. I say the problem with doing that, and I understand why everybody would be excited about it, is you end up handing all of your new signees some losses. I say wait until 2022 to put that tournament together. Get everybody in, get them a couple wins, get people really, really excited rather than handing them L's right out of the chute. Plus, with tournaments, you just never guarantee the matchups that you want to put together. I think you can maximize your new signees by matchmaking them the way you want to. For me, I'd go heavyweight. At heavyweight, you got a lot of names that nobody's really excited about. Maybe that tournament would actually generate the excitement that you want around those guys. Put the light heavyweights in 2022.
That would be an interesting one. I do love a good tournament. I just hope that whatever they do in 2021, we see at least one Grand Prix from Bellator over the course of the next 12 months. That is all we've got time for on this week's show, guys. Thank you to John Morgan, to Mike Bohn, and to gorgeous George Garcia. Thank you to Goes for running the show behind the scenes. And most importantly, thanks to you for checking us out.